Borough of Belmar and the Asbury Park Press on December 7, 2017. A notice of this meeting was posted on the bulletin board of the municipal building.
Can we all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. If we could just remain standing to honor our troops and their families, and a former employee of the Borough of Belmar, Joe Nealon, keep him in our thoughts. Joe was a longtime Little League president. He was my right-hand man in recreation basketball for about 25 years. Brother-in-law of Mike Campbell over there. So if we keep Joe in our thoughts. Thank you. Workshop discussions. We don't have anybody from the audience, but there are two topics that I want to go over today. I think that you received a packet about what we want to do for the memorial benches and trees at Silver Lake Park and at McCleary Park. So if you've had a chance to review them, let's talk about this so we can go further in getting it together. If you see, Mike and Colleen walked around Silver Lake. I've walked around Silver Lake too. There's probably room for about 21 memorial benches around the perimeter of the lake. You have a map there that shows you where they could possibly go. Those benches cost about $700. And that's what it costs us, correct, Colleen?
It's about $650 for the bench and an additional $50 for the engraving. So we don't make any money on the program. It's a net zero cost.
Okay, and also at Silver Lake, around the new playground, which is in the direct sun all day long. So we want to try and plant some trees to give some shade over there. And what we could do is, instead of just making them shade trees, we could make them memorial trees and have someone come forward and use that tree for, a family member or for whatever reason. And we're thinking the cost for the tree, and we're just throwing that out there, $400. Now, the trees probably cost us $125, $150. And there's a saying that when you buy a $100 tree, you dig a $200 hole. That's so important. You can't just buy an expensive tree and just stick it in the ground and expect it to grow. So there's going to be some expenses to us to make sure that tree grows. Like we have to water it, we'll have to mulch it, we'll have to prune it for about 2 years before that tree has a root system that can, take off on its own. So what do we think about the prices for the bench and trees? Mark?
Cost doesn't bother me. My concern would be I don't see any price for picnic tables, but I see them listed here for McCleary Park.
We have it listed at $700 per table. I don't know if you see it down there at the bottom.
That's what that
Oh, okay.
700 means.
There it is. I was looking at Silver Lake. If those picnic tables or benches get vandalized or damaged, what's the process for replacing them?
Good
Do
question.
we get cost for that, or are we going to just say remove it?
The way we have run the bench program to date is that this is a one-time acquisition. The bench is there for as long as nature or acts of God allow it to be there. We're not responsible for vandalism. Now, if something extraordinary happened and we could handle something on a case-by-case basis, of course we would. But part of the program that was so successful all along the boardwalk was the understanding that this was a one-time purchase. We can't guarantee the life of that bench.
What do we do when it's, when the bench becomes in a state of disrepair? Who's making the decision to remove it?
That'd be
So
up
let
to
that be
DPW.
DPW and,
That'd be up to DPW for safety reasons.
Will there be any type of reimbursement, or will we give that person an opportunity to maybe place another one there?
We could
Be
do
on the
that. We
first-
could give
First
them
on the list to be able to do that?
first option of refusal.
Okay.
We could write that into the contract.
We can give them the bench.
Yeah, give them the bench. They may want that, they may want to repair it. But it may be in a position where we've got to get out of there because it increases our liability, and someone can get hurt on it.
Sure.
But they may want to put it in their backyard or something.
Hey, Mayor?
Yes?
Mark's got a question.
Just to answer Mark's question about the longevity, the benches that we're buying are rated for 20 years.
Okay.
It's not a cheap bench at all. We could have gone with a much cheaper bench. Again, not including vandalism or floods or acts of God, but the lasting, the longevity by itself should last a long time. We actually shopped around and made sure that that was, you know, something that you want. You don't want to just buy a new bench every 2 years and have people's memorials go away.
Sure.
But again, I can't go with vandalism or floods but again, with hopefully the benches themselves, if they say 20, hopefully they'll last 30. But again, they are very well-made benches, and we're trying to do the same with the picnic table, so. All right?
Great. Thanks, Mike.
We're not looking at putting any trees at McCleary Park right now because the conditions over there get pretty extreme. And it's hard to select a tree. You may have to take a couple of attempts before a tree really takes root with the winds coming off the river and it's very salty air. And willow trees might work over there. London plane trees might work over there. But it's a difficult area to grow some trees. So we're going to take a simple route and go with the benches right now and make it a picnic area. How are those barbecue?
The new grills are installed.
They are installed?
They are installed. 12 new grills went in about 2 weeks ago. DPW installed them, and they're very, very popular.
Who decided where they went?
The boss.
Now, in other words,
Not quite. Our fire marshal, who actually we like to consult on matters of fire safety, worked with us to make sure we were placing them correctly and not underneath the shade of the tree. And the mark out happened with the fire department, with the fire marshal and DPW
And Charlie.
and Charlie.
that would be a problem if the barbecue grill caught a tree on fire, fell on one of our benches and burned.
That would, yes.
The worst case scenario.
Yes.
Okay. Mark, do you have any?
Yeah, just a couple of things. I'm glad to see that the prices are, you know, inclusive of everything. And, I mean, I'm sure that'll get the trees up and benches out there. The only thing, the 4x6 engraved plaques,
Yes.
is that like 4 inch by 6 inch or
Yeah.
4 feet by something like that?
It's like a
That's-
typical tree plaque size. But that's up for discussion if you'd like us to spec something else out.
Yeah, no, I just, you know, it's with the 4x6 engraved, you know, that we have a certain design and it's gonna be like aluminum or metal or stone or, you know, maybe we could decide, you know, so it's not, every one of the trees has something different.
No, it would be a
Yeah.
consistent look
Yeah.
across all of them.
Yeah. Now, would the engraved plaque be included with the $400
Yep.
price? So we would be putting that.
Yeah, we
so they're
cost
all
estimated
consistent.
that into there.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna agree with it all. And the placement of everything looks pretty good.
Great.
Over to you, Jen.
Yeah, I definitely like the placement. I definitely think we're in need of more benches and trees. The price, you know, it's a little high, but that's what it is. We're not certainly wanting to make any money on it. And I just hope people take advantage of it because I think it's very, very nice program.
Good.
Now, the Shade Tree Commission, at our last meeting, thought that the best trees, the most versatile trees to do over there at the playground would be like a pin oak tree.
Yep.
It's not too big, provides shade, grows pretty quickly, and we will be planting them on the east side of the park and on the west side of the park for shade. But along the southern fence, probably go with more like a flowering tree, perhaps like a
Great myrtle.
crepe myrtle or something like that. Crepe myrtle does well in in this kind of conditions.
Yeah.
So it should grow well, and this time of year, the crepe myrtle are in bloom, so it'll give us color in the middle of the summer. So, anybody else? I mean, do you recommend any other trees? Yeah, we've researched it pretty good.
The type of tree on here we're not specifying, right? I assume that's gonna be left up to the Shade Tree Commission to determine
Shade Tree
exactly.
Commission has decided, yeah.
Yeah, we're recommending the pin oak for its versatility. And, you know, it should do well there. So, you know, I like this idea around Silver Lake and McCreary Park. Also mention that we also have Doughboy Park over here, and there are some trees already planted, and they're mature trees. If someone doesn't want a memorial tree at Silver Lake or at McCreary Park, perhaps they would go with a plaque at one of those trees at Doughboy Park. Maybe if one of their family members was in World War II or World War I even, something like that. I think we should not discount that. Maybe we just charge them the price for the plaque or something like that, since those trees are already there and are mature.
We could have a conversation with the Historical Society as well, so just as people can sponsor some bricks, maybe
Yeah,
that could be a nice program
exactly.
for them to
Yeah.
adopt a tree. So I can
Exactly.
talk with them.
Okay, next thing on the workshop discussion. Last night at the planning board meeting, we had an application which was a change of use at 1600 Highway 71. It's where Mr. Shrimp used to be. Mr. Shrimp has moved next door, actually across the boundary line into Wall Township. And the owner of that building wants to move back to that building at 1600 Highway 71, RKE Athletic. And he wants to bring his retail store there and a chiropractor. So the use was a change of use, but now that store is going to have a lot lower impact. But he still had to come before the planning board. Because we have an ordinance that says any changes of use, that's what you have to do. But it costs the gentleman a lot of money to go from a busy restaurant to a low-impact chiropractor store. So I wonder if you might want to entertain the thought to amend that ordinance to allow it to be done administratively instead of the man to show, an applicant to show up and spend hundreds of dollars for a lawyer, an engineer, and whatnot. Any thoughts?
No, I actually think that's a good idea, because he was going from a high impact retail location to a low impact, and it is really detrimental to somebody that has to come before the planning board for an application like that and spend all the money.
Yeah.
When it's actually a better use of the space. So like if he's going from an A to a B, or however we can word the ordinance, yeah, I would be all in favor of that.
Mark, any thoughts?
I wasn't at the planning board meeting, so I didn't hear the specific details on
Okay.
on the case, maybe it's subjective as to what is something more beneficial use to the community, so I want to take a look closely at any ordinance before I judge an opinion on it.
Yeah, I agree with Mark. I would like to find out a little bit more details before giving my thoughts on that.
Now I'm going to throw it down to you, Greg. Do you think we could amend that ordinance, or would you need to talk to Doug Kovats, the planning board?
I need to talk to Mr. Kovats. I'm not sure the exact situation, one, but two, obviously you control your zoning ordinances and your planning guidelines. But I'm not sure if the municipal land use law entitles surrounding property owners to a hearing, notwithstanding, those ordinances. So I'd have to check with Mr. Kovats about the exact situation, but anything we can do to streamline is obviously always good for, business owners. But I have to make sure that that's not a requirement of municipal land use law, in which case it wouldn't be within your purview to change.
Now, there was another thing that we talked about the planning board last night, it was something that the council sent to the planning board for their review. And the general opinion of the planning board was, well, we should find out what the council wants. So really, okay, I'm the mayor, we're the council people, but I don't know the ordinances well enough to know what's best for Belmar. So I'm thinking our planning board attorney, our zoning board attorney, and our borough attorney get on a conference call or talk to one another and go over some of their thoughts, and maybe our attorneys recommend to the council so that we can recommend to the planning board and the zoning board. What do you think there, Greg?
I can certainly get together. Sounds like I'll be talking to Mr. Kovats anyway. If Mr. Kenny involved shouldn't be a problem. He's usually available. It was in respect to a referral from the governing body to the planning board?
Yeah, on the, across the way, when amending the Seaport redevelopment, which is on the agenda today, going from a mixed use, retail on the first floor, residential on the second and third floor, and changing it to residential on all 3 floors. We sent that question to the planning board, and they basically last night wanted to send it back to us to see how we felt. So there was a little like, we meet here like twice a month, planning board meets once a month, and we really don't know the ordinances as well as the legal staff does.
Right, and there's staff in the planning and zoning boards that's their job. Is to
Yeah.
know as well. I can certainly touch base with them and determine, figure out what the referral was, and then I can get to them and find out exactly what the situation is, what the status is, and bring it back to you guys in another form.
Okay, also at the planning board meeting, we got the 2017 year-end report from the Zoning Board of Adjustment. And actually, we saw this a couple weeks ago. And the zoning board wants the mayor and council to consider a couple matters. Like one is the use of garages. Our ordinance states that garage is only for vehicles. But there's some people that want to use their garage for a studio, or an art loft, or some other reason. And so, does that affect the parking ratio on that property? And there's also, they want us to clarify the ordinance of for the definition of what a bedroom is. I think you mentioned that to us one time. For what a bedroom should be.
Argument everywhere, yeah.
Another thing on the zoning board is requesting the council to review is the multifamily cluster development.